Hello, Tom LaVecchia here with the New Theory Podcast. Today, we have a very, very special guest calling in. His name is Jeff Hoffman, serial entrepreneur, and that's to put it lightly, who has been involved with Priceline.com, UBid.com, and now ColorJar. Jeff Hoffman, welcome to the New Theory Podcast. We like to start with, what are your formative years? If you kind of walk us through your formative years and what kind of makes you you?
I think, strangely enough, growing up, I grew up in the Arizona desert.
Okay.
And growing up in a town where everybody was perfectly happy to stay put and do nothing different. I had a lot of people around me that said, hey, this is good. We don't really need to go anywhere or do anything else. And that sort of really inspired me because I was pretty sure there was a much bigger world out there that I needed to go find.
Nice.
So that environment kind of made me wonder a little bit more about, people's thoughts and dreams and goals, why some people are particularly fine how they are now and why other people have some itch to go do things. And it really set me off on a journey of discovery.
Love it. Okay, so you started out with your journey of discovery, grew up in the Southwest. Did you kind of follow the traditional path, university, corporate, and then entrepreneurship, or were you an entrepreneur out of the gate?
No, well, yeah. Actually, I was, because as a kid with a divorced mom and 4 kids, who was trying to make ends meet, one of the things I was trying to do was not put more stress on her by having her have to support me all the time and asking for money and whatever. So I was always out as a kid, whether it was, from mowing lawns to selling seeds door to doors or trying to sell books door to door. I was focused on independence. And independence meant I could find some way to earn some money myself so it's not more burden on my mom. However, when I went away to university, I will admit, I got an engineering degree because everybody said, get a degree in some good field where you can get a good job, get a good paycheck.
Correct.
I wasn't fascinated by engineering. I got an engineering degree because I knew I could get a good job. And I did. When I left, by the way, I ran a business to fund my college. I went to a school I could not afford. I went to Yale.
Wow.
I did not have money. Public school kid from a little town out west. I did not have money to go to Yale. Neither did the family. So when I got there, they said this: you can go home since you don't have any money. You can find a way to come up with the money. So I started my first software company at 18 as a freshman.
Wow.
And I ran it all those years and actually paid my own way through college. But when I was finished, and I still didn't say the word entrepreneur, what I said was, I got goals and I got dreams and no one's going to do it for me. So starting a software company wasn't about being an entrepreneur per se, but really about money. It was about, I'm not leaving Yale without this degree. And this turns out to be a really important lesson because very goal-driven entrepreneurs are far more focused and undefeatable than people who are just out trying to make a buck. People that focus on money are outperformed by people that have some purpose. It's their passion that's driving them. So I just was not going home until I got that degree.
Wow.
When I left, though, everybody was saying, you got to go get a job, you got to go get a job. So I went and got an engineering job at a big engineering company. But I got to tell you, man, I hated it. I hated it from the start. And it didn't last long. So I only did that a couple of years, then I quit, and I've been doing startups the entire rest of my life.
Okay, so before we get into, you're a whale, let's call it what it is, but let's get into initially, let's talk about who were some of your earlier influencers in your life, whether they be business or non-business, that kind of shape who you are.
So clearly, Mom, that's number one.
Yes.
Because I had a mom wouldn't say why, she was the why not person. Why not you? Why can't you do that? And that's really, really helpful. Because like I said, I had big dreams and things I wanted to do. And when you're around somebody that says, sure, why not? Go for it. It sure is helpful as opposed to being around somebody that is constantly, doubting. So I think that helped me a lot. But I had role models, business role models, which I got to tell you, Tom, was really cool now.
Yeah.
And, like one of my first big role models that I used to watch in business and just admire was Nolan Bushnell.
Okay.
He started Atari, if you remember.
Yeah.
He hired Steve Jobs and he hired Wozniak, and today Nolan's a good friend of mine, but I admired his risk-taking, his creativity, his business prowess. That was a hero for me. And so I tried to study him and learn about him and read and do what he did along the way. He was definitely a role model.
Nice. And if you don't mind me asking, Jeff, what is your mom's name, and is she still with us?
Say that again?
What is your mom's name? So I want to recognize her, and is she still with us?
She certainly is. My mom's name is Doris.
God bless. God bless. Just check.
She's a little tiny ball of fire. She's a fighter, and I did not hate learning that from her.
God bless. I just want to honor that, because one thing that really resonates with me, kind of funny because he did many things, but I had like 2 paper routes growing up, and my mother would actually rubber band my papers so I can go out and get them done. And I really wanted to succeed for her, because I wanted to make it easier. So that really resonated with me, and I appreciate you sharing that. So you are a serial entrepreneur, obviously, and I if I read correctly, there's like quadrants. There's 2 Uber successes. There's some flops. There's some sales, and there are 2 that you're running. Why don't you first talk about your biggest failure to date and what you learned from it?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll get the time sense. It's kind of mid-'90s, but we had this crazy idea that why do you need to drive to the mall to buy a sweater? You have a computer in front of you,
okay,
and you can access inventory through this cool new thing that was called the internet. So we went and built the technology to shop online. We spent money, right, doing all that. We were so excited. We even got some early brands like Lord and Taylor, much more conservative retailers, to come online.
Oh, wow.
So we had products to sell. And we built this technology, and then we turned it live, and it was just crickets chirping.
Wow.
And our initial thought was that, a woman that would go to the mall to buy a sweater, but, she has the kids, and it's hard, and it's a hassle hauling the kid, whatever. This is what we thought.
Yeah.
We'll tell her, this busy mom, you don't need to drag the kids to the mall and chase them around while you're trying to try on a sweater. You know what sweaters you like. You can just shop online. But nobody bought anything. And the company failed, and we had to shut it down. However, here was the lesson. We started following up some of the people that browsed the site and bought nothing. So we got some moms to talk. And we're like, why didn't you buy something? And the moms said, I'm not putting my credit card onto a computer. Where does it go? Into outer space?
Wow.
Said, no, it goes to the retailer. And they said, and onto a screen somewhere where everyone can see my credit card? We said, absolutely not. They said, how do you prevent that? We said, we use something called RSA 128-bit encryption. And I remember the first mom said to me, I'm sorry, I only speak English. I said, that was English. She said, not to me. Here's the deal. We were all software engineers. Everyone in my entire world around me knows what encryption is. Right? But not one housewife did. And our lesson learned was being blinded by your own brilliance. If you are literally not your customer, quit listening to your own ideas. If we had gone out and talked to a bunch of our target, which was housewives, then we would never build this company. So now, when people are doing startups, they talk about MVPs.
Correct.
Get your minimum viable product out and see what the market thinks.
Correct.
I think that's already way too late. What we do as soon as we have the idea, we get out of the office, we go find some housewives and say, look, before we start building an MVP, would you even use this thing? And how do we have to get it right? So that was the failure. It was an e-commerce company too early. And the lesson was, as soon as you have an idea, you need to get out of your office, into your domain, and see where those people stand. Who cares what you think?
And you make a great point, because even back then, even more so, it's about trust, right? So obviously nowadays, I'm a digital marketer by training, and where you guys finish dev, we come in and hopefully sell it, right? So trust logos and that kind of stuff probably would have helped. But who would have thought of even putting trust logos back then, because there was nothing to trust. And that which leads us to your biggest win. I mean, I remember the commercials, obviously doing some research. I didn't realize that you guys have the portfolio that you guys have, but Priceline.com, I mean, so much to ask, but just give us, what was the inspiration behind it and how did you get it going?
Well, Jay Walker was the inspiration.
Okay.
Jay is an inventor. He's one of the most patented people, I think, in U.S. history. And Jay is the one that had the idea for reverse auctions for unsold inventory.
Wow.
He had patented that. So he got that looking at the fact that the internet was very seller-driven and that commerce should be buyer. Just tell me what you want and how much money you have to find for you, instead of you doing all the work. So that was his original idea. And then Jay began building a team of executives and people to actually create this company and a series of other companies around it. But that's what the original from him looking at seller-driven commerce and saying, let's make it buyer-driven.
Wow.
And then all of us, a whole group of people came together to start building the company and all the various forms of reverse auctions.
Got it. Now, at this point, let's talk about the touch point. Were you a known entity in the entrepreneurial space? Was he your drinking buddy at Yale? Like, how did you guys connect? Because I think that you obviously got the right person on the team, but I always like to build, right, and build the story. What was the connection point between you and him?
So it was the speaking circuit. Jay had a lot of IP and a lot of inventions. And by the way, this is, I think, an important lesson for listeners. One more reason to get out of your office, right? No. One reason, as we said, is that your customer is not in your office, so don't hang with them. But the other reason is, sometimes people say to me, Jeff, you've just been really lucky in your career. And what I always say is, I've just been really engaged. The more people you meet, the more places you go, the more things you do, the more likely you are to stumble across people and ideas you'd never find in your office. So I was out speaking about the future of travel and tourism, and so was Jay. And we met multiple times on stage, and the audience would always say, man, you guys are a good 1-2 punch. You should work together. And so that's where we met, where we were both talking about the future of travel and the intersection between technology. And Jay said, we should work on this kind of stuff together.
Got it. Now, when did you realize, because you started the company, I remember when it launched, back then, obviously, it's grown to a multi-billion-dollar concern. My question is, how did you know when you really had something? When was that moment where you're like, holy shit, like, we're going to be rich? Like, what happened? Was it a media event? Was it just a grind? When did you realize you had something? What was that combustion moment, if you will?
Yeah, I think it's the first time that you hear completely independent consumers. The media can say all they want. Remember the media hype leading up to the Segway?
Yeah.
I think, well, not really. So media hype and talk is cheap. Only thing that matters, and the day you start to realize in any business that you're onto something, is the day that random consumers that have no reason to give you their money, they don't care about you at all, they care about their money, start buying from a company something you built. That's absolutely amazing. So I just remember starting to hear, we were building several different sort of streams of product at Priceline, but I was in the mall and I heard somebody talking about the fact that, oh my God, this thing is amazing. You got to try it, and telling everyone at her table at lunch at the mall, and everyone's writing it down. And I was like, people like it, that something's going on here.
Wow. And okay, so you invented a system that was buyer driven. Now, one thing I never understood, you probably chuckle when I say this. I was driving, I'm in New Jersey, and I was driving, and I saw Liberty Travel, and it still exists, and there was a building there, it looked old, there was no cars. Why didn't Liberty Travel at that time say, oh shit, you know what, either buy you guys out, or say, why don't I just, we have an ecosystem, we have a footprint, let's just go ahead and mimic them or buy them out. I'm just fascinated why they move so slowly, and I'm even more fascinated they still exist, but anyway.
I think that's an absolutely great question. And, for me, it really predated that. Before there was a Priceline, I was involved on the team that built Expedia,
Oh, wow.
which actually came first. And so the reason I got involved in that is prior to that, I had a company called CTI, Competitive Technologies, where we were one of the first companies ever to create online booking technology.
Oh, wow.
So at that time, that company I sold it to. That company was acquired by American Express.
Okay.
They did say, wait a minute. This technology is going to replace travel agents. We better get involved in tech. But literally in a lot of other companies, way back then, we showed this to a lot of companies. And I'm going to tell you, and I think this is a really important lesson for your listener. I'll tell you what happened because the music industry repeated it. What people have a bad habit of doing is looking at their competitors and saying, well, we're doing just as well as them. So they look at their competitors. If they match up against their competitors, they conclude that everything's fine.
Oh, wow.
The problem is, what you should really be doing is tracking your competitors, but responding to market conditions. So here's the prime example. Because I remember this. I've been involved in music many years. Then one day, this new thing comes out called an MP3. And I say, what is that? And they say, it's electronic music. I remember literally, I won't name the label to protect them, but sitting with the CEO of a major record label, saying, this thing is exciting. He said, it's some kind of nerd tech thing.
Oh, no.
It has nothing to do with music. We're still going to keep selling CDs. And I said, don't you think you should look at this new technology? He said, no, we're not programmers of the nerd world. So the music industry did not look at the new technology. They just kept looking at each other and saying, we're doing well against the other music companies. And guess what? The music industry failed to invent iTunes. They failed to invent iPod. They lost billions of dollars and thousands of employees, and Apple paid all of it. The situation to me was the same. There were companies that, traditional travel companies that owned the customer at the time. But when we start talking about things like online booking, pre-Expedia, pre-Priceline, a lot of them would say to me, Jeff, no one wants to do that. That's for technical people and nerds who like to play on their computer. My customer is a saleswoman. She's busy, and she's never going to book her own travel. So they just never saw it coming.
Wow. So wow. I'm taking notes here as we go. I'm going to listen to this later, and I'm taking notes as we go. There's some great pearls here. So how long did you stay with Priceline through the IPO, and how long did you stay on, and when did you know it was time to leave?
Yeah, a few years after that. But when I was working on, so we were working on something we called the Priceline yard sale.
Okay.
And I was running that company. This is all post-IPO. I obviously was part of the team pre-IPO, and then we launched Priceline and these other efforts. And post-IPO, when the internet bubble crashed, now you're a public company with public shareholders, and we were developing new products. We were developing Priceline for groceries, Priceline for gas.
Yes, I remember that.
A Priceline model that was eBay-like. That was the yard sale. And the public shareholders said, stop spending any money on anything. Don't develop any new products. And for me, I'm a builder. It's interesting because I remember a conversation I had with Jay Walker many years ago where Jay said, it seems to me there's three types of people out there: inventors, builders, and operators. Inventors, which is what Jay was originally, come up with tons of ideas, but they don't actually make anything out of it. Builders say, stop. I like that idea, and they go build a company around it. And then operators will stay there the next 15 or 20 years just running the business. And so I knew I was in the middle. If I can't build something new, I'm probably wasting space. So that's when I said I'd rather go build new things. And at that time, the whole internet companies were going under, and everybody was saying, hunker down and don't spend any money on R&D and new development. So I said, I'll go somewhere where I can build again.
Wow. So at that point, you're obviously, you probably did pretty well financially with the IPO. At that point, you're seasoned veteran. You've been around the block. What was your first endeavor post Priceline?
So we went and built. Well, I was in an airport, waiting in a long line to check in, and I missed a flight, and was very, very upset about it. That's a pretty expensive error right there. And the reason was, back then you had to stand in that line, and all you did was show them your idea, and they sent you they printed a boarding pass for you. And I was not too happy with this, the silliness of that, because it's a printer. So the next thing I did was we designed, invented, patented, started selling in airports the first check-in kiosks. So that you could, what you do today, you walk up in the airport and you check into a flight, you get your own boarding pass. We were one of the early pioneers of patenting and inventing and delivering those, and we started installing them in airports everywhere.
Got it. Makes perfect sense. All right. So at this point, you know, you're a few businesses deep. You're doing well. You know, one thing I'm getting really fascinated with these days is the entrepreneur conversion over to the CEO. So obviously, it's a different muscle, as you said, to invent and to build. But then now you have to run a company. So are you, you know, a serial entrepreneur, you're going to keep building and then selling off? Or, you know, are you now kind of a CEO where you want to maintain something that's already built? Where are you at in your headspace?
You mean back then or now?
Now.
No, I have. It's funny because I have never enjoyed the CEO part. It was a necessary evil, and I want to share this with your listeners as well. An important lesson learned when I look at entrepreneurs now. I get people today, Tom, that come up to me. They'll call me and they'll say, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. And I'll say, really, tell me about it. And they'll say, yeah, I got an office, a business card, a website, and a logo. And I'll say, okay, you have everything but an idea. Which just absolutely blows me away. The best entrepreneurs, and I'm going to tell you this story, will answer your question, are so focused on solving the problem that they can't see anything else. So I told you that the problem I attacked was building kiosks for airports so people could print their own boarding pass. Beautiful. And I'm working on this. And one day, buddy, I'm an engineer. I don't know finance. I don't even know CEOing. Like the first big problem I had was I needed to hire people. How do you hire people? How do you interview people? The only classes I took were engineering. I don't even know how to conduct an interview or how to hire people. But I get a few people hired, struggle, and then with no CEO training, and then I'm working away on the design of these printers. And I've got a friend of mine who just comes by once a week to do the books for me because I don't know finance. And one day he says, good news and bad news. I said, what? He said, the good news is I got somebody that I told a friend of mine, a wealthy friend, about what you're building, and he loves it. He wants to give you some money as an investment. I said, what's the bad news? He said, the bad news is, he said, dude, you don't have a checking account. I said, yeah, I have time to deal with that crap. I just want to build these machines. I said, go get me a checking account. And he said, yeah, there's another problem. And I said, what? And he said, you haven't even formed a company. I can't get you a checking account. And I remember saying, look, I am really busy building these machines. Can you just do that stuff? So the good news, bad news is entrepreneurs that are totally focused on solving a problem do a lot better than people that just want to be an entrepreneur because it's cool now. But the skill set you need to be a CEO is not obvious and not taught to most people. So I had never really thought about doing all those things myself. And I realized was the only way to succeed is to surround yourself with people smarter than you in every area that is not your expertise. So I eventually hired that guy for finance. I hired somebody that knew HR. As you build, you should be looking from day one to get people smarter than you in I'm only good at one area, the product. I'm an engineer. Everything else, I need better people to do that. So that being said, I've never loved being a CEO. It was a necessary evil. What I've loved doing was building solutions to problems. And if I could have done it without a company and without a checking account, without employees, I would have done it. But none of that's real. You have to learn all those things. So today, my focus is on really sharing those lessons learned with entrepreneurs who are in the exact same spot I was then, trying to make sure that we share everything good and bad we've ever done with startup entrepreneurs today to increase their odds of success.
Okay, so that was actually good segue because what are you doing now? Because like you obviously you're I mean at the very least you are a clear inspiration, but now you're starting to give back and start to mentor us kind of beginners. So walk us through what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Sure, and I will say that I continued doing startups just very quickly.
Yeah.
We launched, we built something called UBid.com.
Absolutely.
The fifth largest auction site on the internet, and we took that public, so I was the CEO of a public company again. And one day, I woke up and realized that wasn't lighting my fire, the CEO thing and running public companies or any of that. And I made a pledge. But to be honest, being an entrepreneur, that career path, created moments for me in my life that I never would have dreamed of. We started two companies in entertainment. We started a film company, which was a startup, using the same entrepreneurial process, and we made some movies that actually were picked up in Hollywood. Then we did a music company that I started, same entrepreneurial process. And, we did tours, we did concerts. But I had moments, I'm going out on stage in front of 30,000 people to introduce Elton John at a concert that I'm producing. I was on the road with people like NSYNC and Britney Spears because we were helping on that. We were part of those tours. We produced a music album. At one point that I was one of the producers of an album that won a Grammy. So all these moments only happened because we started our own companies and we entrepreneured. So I made a pledge. And I said, I am going to give back to the field of entrepreneurship by becoming a mentor. So in 2012, Tom, 2011 was when I left my last CEO job with UBid. And in 2012, I said, I'm going to take this year to mentor. It's kind of a social experiment. I said, for 1 year, I'm going to give back by not saying no to anyone that asks for help. Some entrepreneurs said, can you help me with this? For 1 year, I'll just say yes. And that means I won't make any money, I won't do any deals, I won't be in the office. I'll just go wherever people need help. And that idea to go mentor entrepreneurs, like the second request I got was an email, came off my TEDx talk, from a young man in West Africa. Said, I got an idea, I don't know how to build it, can you help me? And I wound up in Senegal, in West Africa. And it was so fulfilling and exciting and educational and inspirational to start working with entrepreneurs all over the planet that I decided that I was going to turn this into kind of a world tour of entrepreneurship. And my 1 year was going to be spent traveling. Well, this is year 5.
Wow.
Of my 1 year commitment. So all I've been doing, I literally just came back from Greece, an event called Disrupt Greece, where I worked with Greek entrepreneurs and helping them try to rebuild Greece. And then I'm leaving tomorrow to Vietnam with entrepreneurs in the Mekong region to help them launch companies. So I spend all my time now helping other people give birth to their dreams and launch their business.
Wow, that's amazing. And I do want to ask, because we're almost wrapping up, but I do want to ask is, where do you stand on the Shark Tanks, the Marcus Lemonis's? Do you think that they're good for entrepreneurs, or do you feel it might attract the wrong people into it for the wrong reason? Where do you stand in those genres as it relates to entrepreneurship?
So a little bit of good, but a lot of what you said. I think you are right on, Tom. What's happened is they have done a disservice to entrepreneurship. The good part was just generally talking about startups and funding in the public eye. Those things. The disservice is in the same way that the music industry, most of the talent in the music industry, spent years and years doing vocal training and practicing and singing in little clubs and working their way up the ladder. So those people do not love American Idol because it's some guy that left his restaurant job, stood in the line, and is suddenly a singer. They feel like it's a very unrealistic lottery ticket approach and doesn't represent the real struggle. In the same way, I think some of these shows have done maybe that misrepresentation of the startup game because they're not, to be honest, if you read the fine print, they're really focused on entertainment, not education.
True.
Their job is not to teach entrepreneurship. The job of a show like Shark Tank people, which it does. So we'll give them their due there. But it really does, some of these efforts sort of deter people because they get all focused on just this pitch and this fundraising. And the truth is, all the data shows that the massive percentage of startups that get funding, as you know, don't make it. What they need is mentorship for the process. if you had funding, what would you do with it anyway? How would you create the product? How would you market it? How would you service it? How would you launch the company? These shows, that's the devil detail in success. None of these shows ever mention that at all. So I think they're leading people to think entrepreneurship is this glamorous fun. You just get on a good show and suddenly you're rich. And it's a grind. It's a long, hard grind, even if you're funded.
True. What does your legacy look like, Jeff?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What do you want your legacy to look like?
So I would love to find, I'm going to give you a real example of that. I've always supported the White House, the State Department, the UN, and their global entrepreneurship efforts as an advisor. And post Obama's Cairo speech, I wound up getting sent to Cairo, to Egypt, to help teach post-revolutionary Egyptians how to rebuild their country. And there was a woman that I met that said everyone in my entire neighborhood is unemployed, and most people didn't have houses, and she was talking about Egypt from the inside out in a chaotic post-revolutionary world. And I said, "What's your dream?" And she said, "My dream somehow would be to figure out to get everybody in the part of town I live in employed. Everybody has a job. Everybody can feed their kids. Kids can go to school. Everybody has a roof over their head." So I worked with her to start a company. It's a food services company, microfinance. She started with $200.
Wow.
And this business grew and grew. And, a couple of years later, when I went back, she had tons, like 100 or 200 employees. She'd employed everybody she knew. Everybody had been able to move into housing. They had 2 offices and sort of factories and assembly lines. She had created value and changed the lives of so many people where she lives. So what I'd like to be able to do, my legacy would be to look back someday and know that even if I only helped a tiny little bit, that if I helped at all by inspiration or mentoring people like her to make a difference in the lives of all the people around her, then this will be a life well spent.
Wow, Jeff, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. And frankly, I'd like to keep in touch. So what are some parting words for our millennial entrepreneurial listeners?
So I would say there's 2 things. And I spend all my time pretty much, or a lot of time with millennials. We even, in our nonprofit, the Unreasonable Group, we even sailed a ship of millennials around the world, literally, to introduce them to problem solving. That's the word I favor more than entrepreneurship. Nice. Introduce them to problem solving and startups around the world. So, we were on the deck of a ship for months with millennials listening to their lives. So that's been an important education for me. And I would say there's 2 things. One is, if you want to achieve business success, if that matters to you, financial success, business success, solve a real problem. I see so many people that are creating solutions looking for a problem. Solve a real problem you see in the world today instead of complaining about it. I would say the second piece is if you want to have impact, then you really actually have to think about that and plan it. You've got to set aside time to build a legacy. You've got to set aside time to mentor other entrepreneurs who are starting behind you or less experienced than you. And that impact turns out to be, we've been very blessed. We are part of, obviously, multiple companies that we all made millions of dollars. That means nothing compared to being able to look at a neighborhood in Egypt, like I told you, or anywhere in the world, and realize that you left a mark. You left your dent, your mark in history and changed people's lives. Impact is something you got to focus on, but you'll find it's far more fulfilling than any business deal you're going to do anyway.
Wow, and that will cement your legacy. Jeff, how can people find you?
LinkedIn is probably the most active place that I am. I'm LinkedIn and Twitter, but I do have a site, jeffhoffman.com, and the easiest is probably my direct email, jeff@colorjar.com, ColorJar being our design company.
Beautiful. And this is Jeff Hoffman, serial entrepreneur who worked on such concerns as Priceline.com, UBid.com, and now ColorJar. Jeff, again, a sincere thank you for being on the New Theory podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Tom. You're doing a great thing for a lot of people.